So in the previous class, we had discussed about the objectives and learning outcomes of this paper. Then we discussed about the syllabus, the units which you are supposed to go through during this semester. Then the recommended books we had talked about. Then the practical syllabus we had discussed. Okay, and then we had started the first unit, Introduction to Chordata, in which we discussed about the very meaning of word chordata, how did it derive, and it derived from which word. Then we discussed about the basic and fundamental characteristics of chordata. So there are three basic characteristics, fundamental characteristics, and besides to these characteristics, there are some other characteristics which are found. Some of them are found exclusively in chordates, but many of them are also shared by non-chordates. Then uh, I had showed you this video. You must be remembering,
Of all the
okay?
sea life stalked by
Isn't it?
Yes,
animalocaris,
sir.
Picaya,
Yes,
Okay,
sir.
so in this video, you discovered that how chordates evolved from non-chordates, worm-like creature, and then how these chordates who earlier developed in aquatic medium ultimately invaded the land territory. Okay, now the second
Yes,
part
sir.
of the unit is outline classification of chordata. So although as per the syllabus, prescribed syllabus, we have to follow the classification given in the Barnes third edition. Okay, and I will be talking about that classification proposed by proposed by Young. Okay, it is the Young's classification for chordata. We have to go through, we have to follow, not Barnes, because Barnes classification is related to non-chordata, which we had discussed and studied in the previous semester. So Young's classification from his third edition, we have to go through. And before coming to that classification, let's see what other way of classifying chordates. So there are many zoologists who have, classified the chordates in this simplified way, in which they think that the phylum Chordata is classified into two groups: Acraniata, that means without cranium or skull. They are also called protochordata, or they are also called lower chordata. Second group is craniata, means with skull, in which brain is protected, or they are also called euchordata, that means they are higher chordates. Now, in the group Acraniata, the these proponents of this classification divided this group Acraniata further into three subphylums: phylum Hemichordata, Urochordata, and Cephalochordata. Further, the Hemichordata has two classes, Enterocnusta and Pterobranchiae. Then the phylum Urochordata has three classes, Acidaceae, Thaliaceae, and Larvaceae. And the subphylum Cephalochordata has only one class, Leptocardia. Coming to the group Craniata or Euchordata, it has one subphylum which is Vertebrata, and it is further divided into two divisions, Agnatha and Gnathostomata. The correct pronunciation of this word is Gnathostomata. Some people call it or say it Gnathostomata, where G is silent. So this Agnatha is further divided, or you can say it has two classes, Ostracodermy and Cyclostomata. All the members of this group have gone extinct, whereas the members of Cyclometa still existing, still living, but they all are parasites. So division of the division Gnathostomata further divided into two superclasses, superclass Pisces and superclass Tetrapoda. This superclass Pisces has three classes, Placodermy, Chondrichthyes, and Osteichthyes. So these three groups or classes are related to fishes. All the fishes are studied within these three classes. And the Ostracodermy, Cyclostomata, Placodermy, Chondrichthyes and Osteichthyes these five classes are considered as an amniota or lower vertebrata. So that means they do not have extra embryonic membrane like chorion, allantois, and yolk sac. These are the extra embryonic membrane which play a vital role in the embryonic development in the chordates. But the superclass Tetrapoda has four classes. First is amphibia, second is reptilia, third is aves, and fourth is mammalia. So these three classes, reptilia, aves, and mammals, are also termed as amniota or higher vertebrate because they have extra embryonic membrane in their embryos. So this is how this is an outline of chordate classification, and if we compare this classification with the classification given by Young, so what we see that the phylum Chordata is also divided into groups Acraniata and Craniata by Young's. Then the protochordates also divided into three subphylums, Semi, Euro, and Cephalochordata, and there are same classes also proposed by Young. Then the group Craniata is also having one subphylum, which is subphylum number 4, and it has two divisions, Agnatha and Gnathostomata. Agnatha has two classes, Ostracodermy and Cyclostomata. Then Gnathostomata, there are two superclasses. So the Young's classification does not speak about these two superphylums, Pisces and Tetrapoda. It remains silent on these two words. Rather, it says that the vertebrata has agnatha and then gnathostomata or gnathostomata, which have placodermy, chondrichthyes, osteichthyes, and then amphibia, reptilia, aves, and mammals classes. Right. So this is how we classify the chordates. This is you can say the traditional view of classifying chordates, whereas the prescribed, or you can say the authorized classification we have to follow, uh, proposed by Young's third edition. So now coming to the features and how on the basis of these features we can differentiate between chordates and non-chordates. So we will take them briefly. Symmetry, we know that chordates have only bilateral symmetrical. They are bilaterally symmetrical, whereas the non-chordates have many other symmetries. You must be remembering, recalling them, radial, biradial, or some of them are lacking symmetry. Whereas talking about metamerism, we know the chordates are truly metamerically segmented, whereas in non-chordates, some of them do not show metamerism. That means there is no division of labor. We know that metamerism plays important role in division of labor. Then the third one is the post-anal tail. So in chordates it is usually present, but in non-chordates it is lacking completely. Grade of organization, we know organ system grade of organization is found in chordates, whereas there are many level of grade of organization seen in non-chordates. Jumps layer, they are triploblastic, three layers, they are diploblastic or triploblastic, or sometimes only one in like in in line like in protozoans. Then the coelom, we know that they are true coelomates, enterocoelic, whereas they may be acoelic, pseudocoelomic, and true coelomates. Then limb derivations from several segments and from same segments. Okay, so we are talking about forelimb and hind limbs. So these are formed by several segments in chordates, but in non-chordates they are formed by same segment. Notochord, we know, present only in the chordates. It is not found in any non-chordates, and even the hemichordates, which were early considered as having notochord in their proboscis region, because the buccal diverticulum was misunderstood as notochord. So we know non-chordate invertebrate have notochord. Even the hemichordates do not have. Only the larval forms of urochordate have have notochord, and cephalochordates do have notochord. So even the adult urochordates do not have notochord. Then gut position, ventral to nerve cord, dorsal to nerve cord, opposite in what happens in chordates. Then pharyngeal gill slits present at some stage of life. This is basic characteristics of chordates, whereas non-chordates it is lacking completely. Then about anus, differentiated and open before the last segment, and opens on the last segment or absent. ब्लड वेस्कुलर सिस्टम क्लोज्ड होता है एंड इन नॉन कॉर्डेट्स ओपन क्लोज्ड और एब्सेंट depending upon requirement of the animal or habitat of the animal or group of the animal. Then heart is ventrally placed in chordates, it is dorsally placed, or sometimes it is absent in non-chordates. Dorsal blood vessel, blood flows posteriorly, so this shows the direction of blood. It flows clockwise. Here it flows anti-clockwise. Hepatic portal system is present in chordate. So with this system, the animal absorbs nutrients effectively in the liver, and whereas it is absent in non-chordata. Then hemoglobin is also present in chordates blood, in which the RBCs have hemoglobin, which combines with the O2 and takes the blood to all the cells of the body, whereas the oxygen gets dissolved in blood plasma itself because the non-chordates do not have hemoglobin. Then respiration, we know that there are specific organs like gills and lungs in chordates, but it is performed by the body surface or sometime in gills or gills-like structure in non-chordates. The brain, it is found remains protected within the skull in chordates, and no cephalization is seen in non-chordates. Nerve cord, single dorsal without ganglia, and usually it is hollow, whereas in non-chordates this is double ventral and usually bearing ganglia. Roots of segmental nerves, dorsal and ventral separate in chordates, whereas dorsal and ventral roots not separate in non-chordates. About the reproduction, sexual reproduction predominant, means only they show sexual reproduction. Sexual dimorphism is also seen in most of the chordates, where male and female can be distinguished externally by looking at morphological features, whereas in non-chordates the main way of reproducing is asexual reproduction, which is predominant in the non-chordates. The last one, the regeneration power, we know that chordates have lost regeneration power to a great extent because of the complexity of their body, whereas because the non-chordates, the complexity of body remains at low level, so they show a great power of regeneration. Now, coming to the first uh, group of chordata, because we have to discuss about the characteristics of protochordates like hemichordates, urochordates, and cephalochordates. So let's see the classification of hemichordata. The hemichordata, general name, hemi means half and chordata means cord bearing animals. So they are not true chordates. They have only buccal diverticulum, not notochord in any part of their body at any stage of their life cycle. They are also called stomochordate. Okay, so as per the Barnes, as per the traditional classification, there are two classes, Enteropneusta. The members of this class are called Acorvum, like Balanoglossus, Saccoglossus, and Glossobalanus, and Trichodera. We have discussed about them thoroughly in practical classes, so there is no need to talk about them further. Then the second class is Pterobranchia. They are commonly called feather gills because they have gills which have many rami, means branches, and the example are Cephalodiscus and Rhabdopleura. And uh, we will be talking about Cephalodiscus and Rhabdopleura in the next few slides. And about the phylum, subphylum, second Urochordata, they are commonly called Tunicata because of the tunicin made, covering around their body, and they are also called uh, because the word Eurochordata means Euro means 10 and chordata means cord bearing. So They have chordate characteristics in their tail, and then it has three classes: Acidaceae, which are commonly called sac animals like Cyanobophilus, and there are some colonial animals as well in Eurochordates. Second class is Thaliacea, example is Salpa, Doliolum, Pyrosoma. Third class is Larvaceae, they are immature forms or appendicular, they are also called appendicularia, like Oikoplura. And the third subphylum is Cephalochordata, example is Amphioxus or Branchiostoma. And this is about the vertebrata. So let's talk about the characteristics of protochordates first, then we will be discussing about the vertebrates. So these are the hemichordates. I am trying to show you these images of hemichordates, like this is Tychodera, then Saccoglossus. One first is Tychodera, second is Saccoglossus, third one is Cephalodiscus, and fourth one is the Rhabdoplura. So if we talk about the hemichordates and its introduction and general characteristics, so the hemichordates, the Greek word hemi means half, and chorde means chord. So they are, uh, they are half chordates. They are actually not chordates at all, but traditionally they have been placed in this protochordate group. That's why we are bound to discuss about them. Then the second point is they are exclusively marine, solitary, or colonial, most tuberculous. So what I was talking about, that some of them are colonial as well, and they are tuberculous. They make tubes in the sand bottom, okay, in the sand, and the tubes are U-shaped. The tubes open on both the ends. From one end water enters, from another end water leaves the tube, and this helps in respiration and feeding. Then the second point is their body is soft, fragile, vermiform, unsegmented, bilaterally symmetrical. Third is they are triploblastic. Their body typically divided into three distinct regions: proboscis, collar, and trunk. We had seen these characteristics when we discussed or seen the pics of Balanoglossus during the practical classes. Their body wall made of a single layered epidermis and mucous glands. So because of the mucous glands, their uh, skin remains slimy, and they do not have dermis. They are enterocoelic animals, and usually divided into their body is divided into three segments. We have already talked about. Their digestive tube is complete. That means they have mouth, esophagus, pharynx. They have mouth, esophagus, then stomach, intestine, and anus. And it may be straight or U-shaped. Their digestive tract may be straight or U-shaped. Then their foregut gives out a hollow buccal diverticulum into proboscis, earlier wrongly considered as notochord. And dorsolateral pharyngeal gill slits are also found. When they are present, they are found in one or several pairs, and they are ciliary filter feeders. So they have cilia in their pharyngeal region, which are implied, which are used for filtering the incoming water current. And their circulatory system simple or open, including a dorsal heart and two longitudinal vessels, one dorsal and one ventral. Then the excretion is performed by proboscis gland or glomerulus, which is connected with the blood vessels. So they get the waste material from the blood, then it is filtered out, and it is expelled to exterior by the proboscis pore. Then they have nervous system, which is primitive type of nervous system. They have dorsal collar nerve cord, which is hollow. The production mainly the production is mainly sexual, but no sexual dimorphism is seen. We have to see the gonads if we have to find out which which sex the animal is of. And then the fertilization is external. The gametes are liberated into the seawater where fertilization occurs, and they show a tornarial larva in their life cycle. So the development is indirect through the tornaria, which has a very significant role in studying the linkage between non-chordates and chordates. because this larval form Tornaria resembles with the Dorlularia larva, diplural larva of Echinodermis. So we discovered that the early chordates like hemichordates derived from the echinodermate larval forms. And there are two classes we know, Enteropnista and Pterobranchia. So the Enteropnista word has also derived from two Greek words. Enteron means gut and pneustos means breathe. So that means the breathing organs like gills are attached with the gut or the part of the gut. As we know, there was a branchiogenital region present in the balanoglossus. So you got the point. I think you got the point or got the meaning of Enteropneusta. They are solitary, free swimming or burrowing animals, commonly called the acorn or tongueworm. We had discussed about the meaning of
Excuse me,
acorn and
sir.
tongue. Haji.
Sir, so can you please repeat the meaning of the word enteropneusta?
Enteropneusta. Entero means gut, okay, and pneustos means breathe. So that means their gut has many respiratory organs like gills. So if you remember the structure of balanoglossus, so in the balanoglossus, the body was divided into three regions: proboscis, collar, and trunk. And
Color and trunk.
has had gills,
Slits.
branchiogenital
Yes, yes,
regions. Okay, so since the
yes,
gills
sir.
are attached with the gut, so that is why the name was given to these animals as Enteropneusta, right?
Okay, sir. ठीक है.
Okay, so the body is elongated, vermiform, and there is no stalk. That means they are not fixed animals. They live in tubes. The proboscis is cylindrical and tapering, used for burrowing, and the collar without ciliated arms. And that means there are no lophophores. Lophophores are rotating organs which are found in other chordates, or which are found in minor phyla. And their alimentary canal is straight, mouth and anus at opposite end. They are filter feeders. So these are the characteristics of Enteropnista. There are many other characteristics as well we will be talking about in the next slide. As far as the pterobranchia is concerned, ptero means feather and branchial means gills. So they have gills, but they are of feather shape. Like in feather, we see there are many small leaves like structure attached to the main rachis. So their gills resembles the shape of feathers. That is why they are called pterobranchia. So they are solitary and colonial, sessile and tuberculous animals living inside secreted chitinous tubes, and their body is short, compact with stalk for attachment. So they are fixed animals. Proboscis shield like. Their proboscis is shield like. It is not conical shaped. Their collar bearing ciliated arms like lophophore. That means the ciliary bands keep rotating and for generating water current. So the next characteristic about the pterobranchia, Enteropneusta, several pairs of U-shaped gill slits are present, sexes separate, gonads numerous, sex-like. So sexes separate means they are not externally visible. They do not show sexual dimorphism. But I have written sexes separate. That means male and female are found separately. We have to study the gonads like testes and ovaries to cut open the body of the animal. Only that we can discover which animal is this. Then the development includes Tornaria larva in some, and asexual reproduction is completely lacking in Belanoglossus and Sacroglossus. And as we know that Tornaria larva is seen in some of the animals like Belanoglossus, but in Sacroglossus there is direct development. No such Tornaria-like structure is seen. So that means when the embryogenesis starts, the embryo starts developing after the gastrulation period. The embryo turns into a complete into an adult form, whereas in Belanoglossus it takes another route, and first it forms Tornaria and then through metamorphosis the adult worm is formed. And about the other characteristics of pterobranchia, the alimentary canal is U-shaped, anus dorsal lying near mouth, ciliary feeding there, and gill slits one pair or absent, never U-shaped. Sexes separate or united, gonad uh, only one or one pair, and development direct or with a larval stage. Asexual reproduction by budding is seen like Rhabdoplura and Cephalodissus. So they are colonial animals. They may be colonial animals. They may show asexual reproduction by budding. Now, next subphylum is Urochordata. So what you are seeing here, uh, these
Please,
are the
can
animals
you
like
zoom out the slide a little?
zoom out or zoom in.
सर zoom out. सर ये थोड़ी सी बड़ी दिख रही है slide.
Now it is fine.
Yes, sir.
अच्छा अभी वही प्रॉब्लम है. So better I show you my presentation in this way so that you can understand. You can see everything,
Sir, this
right?
is fine. Sir, this
This
is
one is better.
fine. Yes,
Okay,
sir.
so these are the some of the euro coordinates I have placed on this slide. So first one is the Siona, second is Pyrosoma, C is Salpa, and the D1 is Oikoplura. Okay, so as you know, these are the bioluminescent, euro coordinates. You can see they produce life, they produce light. Okay, so they are bioluminescent organs, and these are beautiful organs. And we see the chordates introduction and general characteristics. So you know the chordates, euro chordates word is also derived from two Greek words. Euros means tail and chorda means cord. So they are having chordate characteristics in their tail region only. Then the Eurochordates are commonly called ACDN. Okay, so let's see what are Ascidians, since their general appearance is similar to Ascidian. And what is Ascidian? The Greek name for the primitive wine sack made of goat's skin. So in earlier time, these Greek people used to make a sack out of goat's skin, not sorry, goat's skin. So it was used to store wine. Okay, so they look like a bag or sack, which is called Ascidian. So the word Ascidian have been taken from the Ascidian. Then the second characteristic or information about the Eurochordates, they are also called tunicata, and the tunicata were derived from Latin word tunica, that means outer covering. So due to a protective leathery case, they are called tunicata, because this leathery case is called tunic or test, made of tunicin. Then they are also called sea squirts, because when they are disturbed, they forcefully eject two jets of water from the two siphons. Hence they have earned popular name sea squirts. So you must have seen, or you must be remembering the video I had shared with you during practical classes, in which I had shown you
Yes, sir.
one, okay, one
Yes,
Yes,
mania.
sir.
herdmania, okay,
Yes, sure.
ejecting
Yes,
two
yes, yes,
jets of water. Now they are
yes, sir.
exclusively marine and cosmopolitan, found everywhere, near the found in all seas at all depth, and they are sedentary, fixed, some pelagic or free swimming, as well as I told you that there are some bioluminescent organs which are free swimming, like pyrosoma, whereas like herdmania, they are fixed animals. They are simple or solitary, and they are colonial as well. Their size varies according to the species, and adult body degenerates because of the retrogressive metamorphosis, become sac-like. They are unsegmented and without paired appendages, and usually without a tail, because they lead a sedentary life. And body covered by a protective tunic test composed of a tunicin, which is a similar to cellulose, hence the name is tunicata. A terminal branchial aperture and a dorsal atrial aperture usually present. They perform different functions. And coelom absent, instead an ectoderm lined strict cavity. This is actually cavity, stream-like cavity present, which opens to outside through atrial aperture. Then the notochord presents only in the larval tail, hence the name Urochordata. Alimentary canal is complete, so they are holozoic. Pharynx branchial sac, large with endostyle, and to several pairs of gill slits. So, do you know what is endostyle? Okay, endostyle is an organ kind of thing, you can say, present in the alimentary canal, used for filtering out the incoming water current. Okay, so they are ciliary feeders, so that means it is the endostyle that filters out the water current for getting the food. Then respiration through taste and gill slits. We know that the main respiratory organ is gill slits, whereas the taste is also plays a little bit part in the respiration. Then blood vascular system open, heart simple, tubular and ventral, flow of blood periodically reverse. So this is very important characteristic. So this is how it because they have simple heart, and for efficient expelling of waste and circulating of nutrient, it rotates its blood periodically in different direction. Then special vendocytes in blood extract vanadium from seawater. So this is one metal that is found in its habitat. It is taken up by the animal inadvertently, or it has no other way to eradicate it. But ultimately, when it is taken, it is extracted from the blood by the veneidocytes, then excretion by neural glands, pyloric gland, and nephrocytes. Then dorsal tubular nerve cord only in larval stage, reduced to single dorsal nerve ganglia in adult. Most hermaphroditic fertilization cross and external development indirect, including a free swimming tailed larva with basic chordate characteristics. Metamorphosis retrogressive, and then asexual reproduction by budding is common. Now, there are three classes: Acidaceae, Thaliaceae, and Larvaceae. So, the Acidaceae are solitary, colonial, or compound, or they are bottom living, body form and size variable, test permanent, well developed and thick, atrium opens dorsally by atriopore, whereas the pharynx large with many persistent gill slits, and sexes united, means they are hermaphroditic, larva free swimming and highly developed. About the Thaliacea, adult free living, pelagic, in warm and temperate seas. They are solitary and colonial. The body shape and size variable like the Ascidians. The tunic permanent, thin and transparent, and with circular muscle bands. Atriopore located posteriorly, pharynx with two large and many small gill slits. About the Appendicularia or Larvaceae, small, very small, solitary, free swimming, pelagic, neotenic, means they start reproduction in the larval stage itself. Larva like form with persistent tail, notochord, nerve cord, and brain, test forming a temporary house inwards periodically. Then atrium and atrial aperture is absent. Other characteristics of Acidaceae: adults usually sessile after retrogressive metamorphosis, when larval notochord, neurochord, and tail are lost and brain reduced to a solid dorsal ganglia. And stolon, simple or none. Stolon means the root. You must be remembering this word because we talked about in your previous semester when we were talking about the obelia. So this is the foot, you can say, by which it remains attached with the substratum. So the examples are Acidia, Cyana. Then this is the other characteristic of Thaliacea: sexes united, larva formed or absent, adult without notochord, nerve cord and tail, asexual budding from a complex stolon, life history with an alternation of generation. So this is important feature uh, of these animals belonging to Thaliacea, and this is how they differ from the Acidaceae. Then the Larvaceae gill slits 2, opening directly to the outside, sexes united, no metamorphosis. Example, Oikoplura. So now I would like to show you one very uh, interesting video of these Eurochordates.
Here are a variety of colonial tunicates, which are filter-feeding invertebrates. After having spent some time with these, I find them incredibly interesting and incredibly beautiful. The downside, of course, is that they're probably one of the hardest things to keep alive. We'll get into that a little bit because it really depends on what type of tunicate you ended up with. So let's start by going over what a tunicate is and what a tunicate is not. Tunicates, are sometimes called sea squirts, are often misidentified in the coral hobby as sponges, and in fact, these were sold to us as tiger sponges, but in reality, they're quite a lot different. Tunicates are a type of chordate. Now, if chordate might sound familiar, people are chordates. We actually share the same phylum. Corals, for example, are cnidarians, which are defined by having stinging cells. Chordates share similarities in their nervous systems, mainly the presence of a notochord and a hollow dorsal nerve cord. Aside from that little bit of trivia,
Hello.
Yes,
Yes,
sir.
sir.
Yes,
sorry, my sorry,
yes,
my
yes.
son taken away my mobile phone.
tunicates
So it's
come
okay.
Sir,
in a
it's
wide
okay, sir.
variety of both colors and shapes. Some of them are isolated individuals, while others are colonial, and many of them actually have a free swimming stage as well, where basically they look like a tadpole. They're called tunicates because of their tunic-like shape. This tunic bag has two different siphons. There's an input siphon and then an output siphon. This tunic is also an exoskeleton. And when I think of exoskeletons, I think of ants or crabs that periodically have to shed them. Tunicates, however, have an exoskeleton that grows with them as they get older. So what makes tunicates so challenging? I should back up a minute and preface that with not all tunicates are challenging. Several of them are practically invasive species. However, the really colorful ones that you probably want to be keeping in your reef aquarium, they tend to be more challenging. And the root cause of that, in my opinion, is the fact that they're filter feeders. Pretty much anything that is a filter feeder in this hobby tends to be on the more challenging end of the spectrum with just Nephthia, non-photosynthetic sea fans, things of that sort. Tend to be nearly impossible to keep because of the food requirements that need to be present all the time for them. To put it into perspective,
Keep your
these
microphone on mute.
tunicates individually can siphon up 100 gallons per day. So they're definitely seeking out quite a large volume of food. The other issue with feeding tunicates is exactly what should you be feeding tunicates. It turns out that depending on which variety of tunicate that you have, they have different feeding preferences. Some consume large quantities of phytoplankton. Others consume larvae from other animals. There isn't a ton of scientific literature on these either when it comes to what a specific
Please unmute
species should
yourself.
be eating. There might be something out there,
Sorry, please
it does appear
mute
to come up,
yourself.
but I found it a little bit of a challenge to find. What I decided to do instead was kind of the shotgun method of just a number of different foods and kind of making slurry and broadcast feeding the entire tank with it. You're introducing a lot more nutrients to the water, so you really have to pay closer attention to
I
nitrates
request
and
you,
phosphates that
please
might build
keep
up.
yourself on mute. There is a
Now,
lot of
even
background
doing it that
noise.
way,
It is
you still might not be reaching the nutritional
disturbing.
demands of the sea squirts. So it's entirely possible that you broadcast feed a number of different foods and the animal simply does not get enough and starts to shrink and decay. Like I said, these things are not that easy much of the time. a couple of ours started to go downhill. And what I did was I basically loaned them out to some local hobbyists that were keeping systems substantially different from how I was keeping mine. So, one in particular keeps his tank at a very, very, very ultra low. Here are a variety of colonial to help. I wish I could tell you what's in sponge power. Not really sure. When you smell it, it smells like nitrate. So, who knows? In any case, if you'd like to try tunicates, be prepared to have to do a lot more research on the front end, as well as doing quite a bit more experimentation with different types of feeding and even changing the way that you filter your aquarium. For example, using one of these probiotic methods that introduce bacteria into the water column periodically. While some of these very brightly colored variants might be somewhat rare to the hobby, there are others that come as hitchhikers, and they might not look quite this spectacular. However, they're pretty charming in their own right. And not only that, they're much more likely to survive. A few of the ones that we have are actually fairly bulletproof. If you do end up with one of these bulletproof hitchhikers, congratulations. And that's probably a good, I guess, beginning step into the world of tunicates.
They roam the seas alone, or in colonies numbering millions. They are Thaliacea salpida, or simply salps. These pelagic tunicates, seemingly at the mercy of the currents, are actually jet-propelled. The rhythmic pumping action which gives them mobility also delivers nourishment, with a mucus web filtering food from plankton-rich waters. Resembling but unrelated to jellyfish, they reproduce and grow quite rapidly, which helps them to avoid predation. Still, they sometimes end up as lunch, another link in the food chain.
Okay, so I hope you liked this video, and
Yes,
I am putting an end to this class over here. Next time we'll start cephalochordates, right?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
yes,